Our show is about bringing the best practices in education to inspire, connect, and empower all educators by providing practical tips that can be used in the everyday school setting.
Welcome to the Coach Me If You Can podcast. My name is Rylee Coteus. I am an NSSEO district coach. I work in a lot of our member districts, working with educators, with superintendents, with related services, just doing a ton of things around education, what's best for our students. Today, we are talking with Dr. Judy Hackett, who has been the superintendent of our special education co-op for the past 14 years. She works tirelessly for our organization and its students in many different ways to help impact change in local and state systems. We're so pleased to have her on our first ever podcast. Dr. Hackett, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. If you can just give us your 1-minute elevator speech, who you are, what you do here, and then maybe a little bit about NSSEO.
Excellent. Good morning, Rylee. And I am thrilled to be here today. My name is Judy Hackett. I'm the superintendent of NSSEO, which is Northwest Suburban Special Education Organization. This is my 14th year as superintendent and 42nd in the field of special education. So I have lots to say and certainly lots to be excited about. The organization has been around for 52 years and serves students with significant disabilities in a range of different educational needs, both in programs that we run as well as some of the work that Rylee and other coaches out in our districts support staff and district teams and building capacity and advancing our efforts. So very, very proud of an extensive array of programs, services, Sunrise Outdoor Education that provides educational opportunities outdoors for our students, a lot of professional learning and coaching, and really a lot of technical supports for our member districts and just really leaders and staff working with students with special needs.
Well said, Dr. Hackett. It's almost like you've had 14 years to come up with that very succinct definition of NSSEO. So when we were kind of coming up with some of our ideas for the first podcast, myself and the other coaches were thinking about, one, who we wanted to interview first. And of course, your name came up. And then two, what our why was behind our podcast. We spent a lot of time thinking about that. And if some of our listeners aren't familiar with Simon Sinek, he is an author who focuses on human decision-making. So he's written a lot of books about the topic. Dr. Hackett brought her book today, Your Life is Your Message. And so he's all about the why behind why we do things and why businesses might do things, why educators might do things. Can you tell us a little bit about, I know you led the leadership team through some Simon Sinek book studies and can you talk a little bit about that?
I would love to, Rylee. Many years ago, shortly after, I believe this Starting With Why book came out, I had the opportunity to hear Simon speak. And it was really a powerful experience for me and for others that were a part of that learning opportunity, because he talked a lot about what really compels successful organizations to really go deeper and advance their work. And he used Apple as one of the companies that really exudes computers and effective technology to really message. And we all know, we all probably own or have someone in our family has an Apple product of some kind. So that Starting With Why really was happening at the same time we were revamping our website. And so we came together as a leadership team and really studied the work of that book, but also that message, and said, is our website communicating our why? And let us look through everything that we say and communicate out to our members, to our audience, to our families, to whoever is going on our website, that they would be able to see our why in our work, in our program descriptions, in the kinds of opportunities that we offer in professional learning, and that we put that out not just as a tagline, but as a theme that's evident in everything that we do.
I love that. Not just a tagline. It's not just something catchy that we at NSSEO say. It's what we truly believe in. So when you're talking about that theme, what we're putting out into the world surrounding our students with disabilities, surrounding the teachers and educators that we work with, what is NSSEO's why?
Our why has really also continued to evolve. I think that it's very important for any organization to really look at what our why, our mission, and our vision is. We have done a lot of that work in several times over the number of years and really kind of further articulated or defined our why. And our purpose is really to emulate and excel our work in terms of helping our students become contributing citizens in our communities. But that we also are driven by what are our students' hopes and dreams, and how can we, in every facet of the work that we do, no matter what our roles are at this organization, that we are all focused on helping those students have the skills and support and confidence and courage to meet their dreams, to meet their life plans.
So NSSEO's why is we take our students and we look at them as whole people and everything that they might be interested in or really want to do, and how can we best support them in that? Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think over the years, in special education in particular, many years ago, since I've been in a field for a long time, we really focused a lot on identification and what the disability was and all of those variables. And now we are much more person-centered and much more focused on whoever that student is, how can we best support that individual student, their needs, and the kinds of dreams and hopes that they want, rather than what we might have said, you might want to do that job. Now we're like, what are you interested in, and how can we best support those dreams?
Definitely. And I think that shows one of the things that NSSEO does here is that we have shining stars. Right. So every month we have shining stars. And I believe it was last month was one of our program schools, micro businesses.
That's correct.
So I think that's really cool. That is our all-encompassing message, is that we want to be using our students' interests and their likes to help them be contributing members of society.
Absolutely, Rylee. I think any one of our board members, and probably anyone that participates in our board meetings, would probably say unequivocally that their favorite part of our meetings is the shining stars, because it shines a light on our students and their success. Whether it's a micro business and we have colorful masks that our students are making, and dog treats and soaps and amazingly creative things in the midst of coming through a pandemic, to small steps, to motor planning, to speaking for the first time, to doing some things independently. So I'm really celebrating that. We've been doing Shining Stars for many, many years now, and have really just embraced so much of the talent and success our students have made, and celebrate that and share it with everyone.
I know the shining stars are definitely my favorite part of board meetings, because sometimes board meetings can get a little long. How does NSSEO's why align with your personal why?
Sure. I think that the book that I am reading is really in a session that I'm in with a number of other leaders called Your Life is Your Message. And it really resonated with me this year, because I think for people to think you are a different person at home than you are at work is very unlikely. And I really do believe that I have been driven by purpose since I was a little girl. And so that piece of my life and my work started when I was young. My parents were both service providers. My mom was a nurse, worked in ER, and my dad was a mailman. Both of them, not what you would call glamorous professions, but very service orientated, and very, very, very proud of their contributions to the community, to the people. And that piece, I think your family, your parents are your first teachers, and they really do emulate goals and values that connect you as you go forward. And that very much has been how I have grown up, is really feeling that I need to be passionate about something, that I need to see a purpose. So since I was a little girl, my sister and I played house and hospital and caring for dolls and little children, and then eventually volunteering with students with special needs. And I have been hooked in terms of helping others since then. I have always gravitated towards a classmate or a friend or someone that was struggling. And that is reaffirming in everything that I have been in terms of my work and in terms of my life. So I see them very closely intersected.
And I love that you bring that up, that sometimes we get this idea that our why might be different at home versus at work, and our values might shift. But you're right. They should be closely aligned. And so I had written down, so your why is, and I was going to nicely paraphrase you, and it would be a little redundant because it's also NSSEO's why. They're so deeply related. And you had mentioned some of your childhood experiences playing dolls. I think most of the educators listening would probably relate to that. I know I played teacher all of the time. What are some of the other experiences in this field that you've had prior to being a superintendent that might have influenced your why?
Oh my gosh. I think there are so many, Rylee, probably because I've had so many. And I think every day there's an inspiration kind of thing. But in my very early years, really, I graduated, as many of us, in late spring. And I have always worked since I was 12 or 13, just delved right into work. And so I had the opportunity to work as a one-to-one assistant with a young boy, early childhood. And I worked with him all summer. And I just loved working with him. I learned a lot from him, but he was also in a very fragile medical state and unfortunately passed away at the end of that summer. So that made an incredible impact on me and my profession. I recognized how fragile the work is. And I had a colleague that quit special ed after that experience because it was too difficult for her to continue in a profession that saw such grief at times. And so I think that little boy and his courage was very inspirational for me. I started as a teacher of the blind and visually impaired. We had all the gamut in terms of student needs in our classes. And I felt like I needed to learn curriculum, at the same time learn needs and understand disabilities in all sorts of different ways. And I did. I learned from my students. I learned from my colleagues. I learned acceptance and inequities in classrooms and in schools that weren't as accepting of our students at that time, and how to persevere, how to advocate for students because they have a right to the education and to the supports and interventions. And there are countless other experiences as a teacher. I do think that any of us, most leaders, start in a classroom of some kind. And I, to this day, think it's been the most valuable foundational skills I could have in my life, is learning how to teach and how to listen and adapt and be flexible. And I think I'm still a teacher, and I also know that I'm still learning. So very valuable.
Oh, my heart breaks for that experience. And also that silver lining of it, that you were able to really take that experience and form it into your why. Because so many of our staff members have come from outside of the field of education. So I worked at a water park when I was younger. I did dog grooming for a little while. And even those things have shaped. What are some of the experiences that you have had outside of education that have shaped your worldview?
My very first job was working for a dentist, and I was extremely young. I think I was 13 or 14 at the time. I do remember he would tell me not to wear pigtails to work, and I think I understand why now, because it was probably breaking some child labor law at the time. But I learned the art of working with people when appointments were backed up and there wasn't a very sophisticated online process in place and all of that kind of thing. So I learned very, very early how to really work with families, work with people, work with fear and anxiety of going to the dentist, clearly. And that was one of mine. I actually thought that would be something I would like in a career until I had other life experiences. That happens where you change your mind and think, no, I think I like that better. So I did work at Rand McNally and studied campgrounds and worked at Arthur Anderson I could type really fast. So I felt like I had a lot of Girl Friday experiences where I could really do that. But I was always looking for something that kind of drew me back to my purpose, to the things that I was really compassionate about. The others I liked, but I didn't jump out of bed thinking like, okay, today I'm going to make a difference. But important work nonetheless. But I was still looking for that. In college, one of my professors was blind and had been severely injured in a hunting accident with his brother-in-law. So that whole dynamic of his loss of his sight, his family dynamics, but I saw that he had found a way to turn that into a profession and to help others. So I was really inspired by that and what he was dealing with. And that's where I kind of focused more in the educational field in the area of disabilities and blind and visually impaired in particular.
Well, I think I am not alone in saying that we are very happy and thrilled that you have settled on your passion in special education and have been with NSSEO for so long. So bringing it back to Simon Sinek just a little bit more, he has this quote that really resonated with me, that we follow those who lead not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. It's kind of this idea that if we are super out there with our why, we build websites that show it just not as a tagline, that we embody this, that we can have really great leaders that move us through that. I'm sure you've read that quote before. How does that quote, that idea kind of resonate with you?
Yeah. I mean, there are so many of Simon's quotes that just kind of compel us every day. And I think some of that is that, you have to live your why. You have to work your why. You can put it up on a board if you want or at the bottom of your email messages, but you also have to emulate that in the kinds of things that you do. And so I think that piece of that is that we have at the top of our leadership agendas, our mission and our vision and our core values. And which goal are we talking about today? And some of the very difficult conversations and discussions and processes that we've had to go through, even in our pandemic year, is like, are we staying grounded on our focus, on our why, on what's best for our students in the work that we're doing? And so that piece is actions, and what we do speaks much louder than saying something or having an inspirational message in a few sentences. And I think that piece of that message from Simon is really what you do is going to have a much more profound impact than what you say. And the combination of all of that is going to be even more influential going forward.
That old adage that actions speak louder than words. We all love putting cutesy quotes up. If we don't embody them, then they don't mean much. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. It's just some main takeaways that I've walked away from in this conversation is that embodying the why, that you have to live it, breathe it, embody it all the time. And then also that some of our past experiences really make our why. What do you hope that listeners take away from the podcast today?
Well, I hope that listeners take away the idea that we all can have an impact on each other, on our field, on the work that we do. And if we have a focus in our field, we're fortunate enough to work with students and families and incredible staff. So if we see that purpose and the importance of really helping them reach their goals and dreams, then working together and keeping our focus and our energy and our passion and our skills all focused on how we can improve their lives, then ultimately our lives are also richer from that experience. And I see that in the work that we do. I see that in the dedication of our staff, the incredible perseverance of our families and our teams and our shining stars that have success moments every single day. So I think those things are the things that give us hope and inspiration. So hopefully anyone listening to this also finds their purpose in whatever they're doing that's making an impact on their friend, on their family, on their children, on their students, and taking one step at a time to making a difference.
So well said. So now we have some rapid fire questions.
All righty, I'm ready.
Okay, what is something new you have recently learned?
I have learned how to knit. So I am very excited. I'm going to be in Abuela in just a few weeks. My son and his wife live in New York and are expecting their first child. So something way out of my comfort zone is knitting. I do appreciate that if you're stressed, it is evident in the way that you stitch. But there's always a good way to coach someone out of that. And so I think that piece, it won't be perfect, but it will be made with love. And it will be something that I hope to continue to do for any other grandchildren that I have, but also just to be courageous enough to try something that's way out of my comfort zone.
I learned how to knit from my grandmother, and that was very exciting. But I only know one stitch, and I can only make scarves.
I only know one too. I like knitting.
Perfect.
Just go in a circle.
Here we go. You can either have a scarf,
a hat,
or a hat. That's it. Dr. Hackett, who was your favorite teacher growing up and why?
Oh, I love this question because I can still vividly remember. His name is Mr. Molitor, and he was my 8th grade teacher. I was in a small school, and I'd say probably much more shy than certainly I am now. But he really was just one of those teachers that really had an incredible knack of drawing out your talents and recognizing that. And I loved to write back then. And he said, you should speak as much as you write, Judy. And the kinds of things that you have to say are much deeper than people know unless you share those, unless you convey those with others. And he taught all of us to start talking to the plant in the room and to all sorts of other kinds of things to encourage us to kind of jump out of our shyness or whatever. And he was really a fantastic, influential teacher, one that I aspired to be like in terms of someone remembering me 30 years later.
And how hard is 8th grade? It is a difficult time. So to have a teacher that really spoke to you is awesome. So I know you brought a book up here. You mentioned it before. Is that the book you're currently reading, or do you have another book you're reading?
I read a lot of books. I love books. I love leadership books. I love other books. I do love podcasts and being able to listen while I'm working out or driving or something like that. So one of the other ones, and we've been talking about Simon quite a bit today, is The Infinite Game. Mm-hmm. And I was in a book club with other superintendents. And this is really a timely book because it really talks about how life, you can kind of take 2 different roads. You can really focus on a finite game. You know, all of us that love sports know that you win or lose and all the analogies associated with that. Or an infinite game is really a road to fulfillment. So that piece really fits with all of the conversation. It's kind of like the next iteration of the starting with why, where you're looking for your just cause. You're looking at, am I doing what's fulfilling in life? Or am I doing it to win an argument, to win a case, to win a particular issue? Or am I doing it because it's for the betterment of the people we serve or for myself in life? And taking that road is harder because it's unpredictable and it really never ends. So that piece, we had some really great conversations about that, but I really could see it applying both to the work that we do, but also to life itself.
Well, you sold me, so I'm going to borrow that from you when you're finished.
Absolutely.
What is the best advice you have for an educator?
Best advice? I think the best advice I had is ones we share when we talk to new teachers is to listen and to reach out to others for support, to be flexible, to avoid making judgments about children or their families, to really stay centered on how can I best support that student? How can I listen to what they need and adapt what I'm doing to really pull out the really great things that student has and really help support them in their growth, their life journey, their educational journey.
Amazing. Well, look at you just bringing NSSEO and your whys full circle right there. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about NSSEO's why. Our whole goal with this podcast is to inspire, connect, and empower educators to do their best for students. That's our why. What is something that empowers, inspires, or connects you to others in this field?
Well, I think, Rylee, it's a lot of what we've just talked about. People inspire people. And so there's not one thing that inspires me. I do love to read. I do love to network. I do love to collaborate. I love big picture things. When I was a teacher, I kept trying to gravitate towards communities and committees and bigger purpose. So I was really encouraged by my own a supervisor to seek out like a higher kind of level so I could be more influential at a systems piece. So the colleagues that I work with, other superintendents and leaders in our districts and in our state and community inspire me. But the most inspiring people I can think of are our students and their families, because they have really amazing courage and perseverance and really many, many challenges. So I am inspired by them every day, and it propels us to do the work we do.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. And that wraps up our first ever Coach Me If You Can podcast. Join us next time where we'll be talking about the silver linings of the dumpster fire, our year in the pandemic, and what that meant for education. We're going to be talking about taking a B, all of the blessings and curses that come with Zoom, and maybe some value talk. We love some good value talk. So join us next week. We're really excited to see you then.